Hello, I'm one of the pastors of this church, and I would like to welcome you to Japanese class. Thank you for signing up for this class to continue to grow in your Japanese conversational skills. Even though we won't be doing it in person due to the COVID-19 situation, and we'll be doing it via Zoom, it's still a way to be able to grow and enhance your abilities to converse in the Japanese language. Before we get started with our class, I would just like to give a short devotion, and the topic I've chosen for today is anxiety. Now, anxiety, stress, and worry was already on the rise in the United States before COVID-19 ever hit. But since COVID-19 hit, and then more things have happened in the world, in our country, in our state, in our county, the anxiety and the stress levels for certain groups of people, for certain people have risen. And so we're just going to take a look at something that somebody named Paul wrote many years ago to the people at Philippi. And he said this: "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." Now, I know that all of you that are in our class are not Christians, are believers. And so hopefully what I share right now will be helpful for both believers and for unbelievers alike. But something for us to contemplate and to think on. First off, Paul says, pray. Well, in the Bible, like in Japanese language, and in Japanese language, right, you have to know who you're talking to. Because Japanese and the Japanese culture is based on hierarchy. So if you're talking to somebody that's above you in that hierarchy, you talk with one set of language and words. If you talk to somebody that's lower than you, then you can use another set of words to speak. So that's why it's tricky. Sometimes when you meet somebody, you have to sort of figure out, where am I in the standing? And which language am I going to use? Well, the Bible, sort of has it. It's a little bit, but just simplify things. In the Old Testament, the old part of the Bible, it's sort of like a high type of language. God is high and lifted up, and so you'll see that type of language being used. But in the New Testament, it's more the common lingo, common talk, and there's a change. And one of the things is that Jesus said that, if you're a follower of me, you can call God Father. And so what happens is there's this relationship that we have. We have a relationship with God. And so Paul says pray. So you could sort of think of pray as talk. Hanasu. Speak with someone. See, so, as Christians, we do both. We speak to God, but we speak to each other. So if you have anxiety and stress, one of the things that you can do is to talk to somebody about it. Share your feelings, what you're going through, what's on your mind, what's on your heart. Because when you do that, it actually helps. It helps to be able to share and to speak. And for Christians, we have prayer. So we not only speak to our friends and speak to other people that are believers in our community, in our church, we talk to God. So the whole aspect of prayer, in the Bible, when you look in the New Testament, because for us that are Christians, we are children of God. And so we talk, we speak, and so what happens is, maybe you're not a believer, but you're still anxious and you're stressed, and what can I do? Well, you can talk. You can speak with a friend. Or tomodachi to hanashite. You get something like Japanese, The Japanese teacher will teach you the correct Japanese and the right words to say and to speak. But you have that idea of speaking. It says supplication. Ask someone for help. Tasukete. If someone is in the ocean and they're saying, tasukete, they're not having a good time. They're saying, help me, save me. In the Bible, we know a guy named Peter. He almost drowned. And when he was drowning, he didn't go with that high and lofty language. Almighty God, I'm drowning, I'm in trouble. No, you know what he says when he's about to drown? Tasukete. Supplication is asking someone for help. See, as Christians, we ask God for help, but we also ask one another. Maybe you're not a believer, but if you're going through heavy anxiety, heavy stress, and it may be something you're having difficulty handling, and it's beginning to feel like a heavy burden, it's okay to ask for help. Because sometimes when anxiety, stress begin to happen, people begin to turn in on themselves. And then all of a sudden you just start pushing everybody away. And so the anxiety gets heavier. The burden gets larger. And so you sort of see, and so one of the things to remember when you go in anxiety is don't turn into yourself, but turn out and ask. Ask your friends for help. Get help. So here's the supplication. So Paul says, pray, supplication. And he says this, be thankful. Be thankful. Kanchasuru. To be thankful. As Christians, we're thankful for what God has done for us through Jesus Christ. We're thankful for his love for us. We're thankful that we're not alone. See, one of the things as Christians, we understand is that sometimes when you're in anxiety, you're stressed, you think you're all by yourself and nobody's there with you. Oh, but Christians, wait a minute. I'm not alone, because Jesus said this clearly. I will not leave you as orphans. Maybe you're not a believer. You ask, why should I be thankful? Because if you're thankful and you're grateful, it's harder to be anxious and worried. Because if you have a thankful and grateful heart, you understand what's happening? When you're overflowing with that, it's hard to overflow with anxiety. So if you have a disposition of gratefulness, a disposition of thankfulness, you're going to be less anxious. You're going to be less worried. You know, you could thank God for us that are believers. There's so many things that we have. If you're an unbeliever, thank God for the roof over your head. Thank God. Or maybe for relationships. Or maybe they're not so going well. Well, thank God you can take this Japanese class. Or be thankful. Be thankful for what you have and what you've been given. You see, when you have that overflowing attitude of gratitude, it helps to weed out the anxiety. That's what you got to think on. What you got to think about. So here's what it says. Do not be anxious. One of the words for Japanese in shimpai, don't. About anything, but in everything by prayer. See, inori, prayer is inori. But I also use the word to talk with someone, talk with them, hanashi, and supplication, nagai, with thanksgiving, kanchasuru, thanksgiving, being thankfulness, that your requests be made known to God. You see, there is a pattern, there is a way for us to deal with anxiety. And so just a few thoughts along your way. Pray or talk about it with someone. Supplication. Ask God for help. Or if you're not a believer, ask someone for help. With thanksgiving. Well, if we're a believer, we've got so much to thank God for. If you're not a believer, you also have a lot of things to be thankful for. You just have to start putting your mind toward those things. And just maybe, you'll be a little bit less anxious as we continue to maneuver this COVID-19 situation. Because the reality is, with the flu season coming up, things might get a little bit more dicey before they get better. But maybe we can keep our anxiety and stress in check. Have a great class.